he started slowly seeing it and then slowly starting to touch it, and then he's like fully eating it and has moved. So he moved from his position and now he's just hanging out upside down eating honey. So just a short video here. I just wanted to make a video of this because I noticed there was a video that I saw, and it was somebody, and they were talking about bumblebees and bees, and that it's kind of hard for them to find water, and so they'll actually starve. And this is a baby, a little bumblebee, and when I found it, it was basically almost dying. It was like curled up, kind of sitting on the edge of this thing, and it wasn't moving or anything. And so I went and I got some honey, and I put that on the end of a butter knife, and I just kind of rubbed it on the flour a little bit, and it noticed it and stuck its little thing out and started tasting it, and now he's eating it. And I also gave him a little bit of water on there. These guys are really important in the ecosystem, so I guess if you ever see them and they don't look like they're doing so well, that's probably why. But he's moving now, and he's definitely, you know, his antennas are moving, and he's obviously doing way better, or she. And so this guy, I can't believe it, he's actually moving around and he's alive again. Like his abdomen, there he goes. Success story right there. Just a quick video here. I just wanted to show you guys something really quick about the truck and how shiny it is and clean and everything. Well, guess what? I washed this thing about almost a month ago, and I've been driving on dirt roads and everything, and I'll just say one thing: Dawn dish detergent. It's got a surfactant in it, and it makes it so that it repels dust and dirt and stuff like that. So look at that. I mean, it looks like I just cleaned this thing. So either that, or, you know, the other dish soaps that are out there will work nicely, you know. Keeps the dirt off for a little while. A lot better than the soap that I was buying, you know, that you get for car wash soap and stuff like that. Way better. Anyway, that's it. Yeah, so at first I got this log here. I cut it because half of the tree kind of rolled onto this trailer. But I was looking at it because I was thinking, you know, it'd be nice to mill out this huge log. It's a big piece of birch. And but the more I looked at it, the more I realized it would have just turned into a tangled, warped mess. There's so many knots and huge burl-like growths all the way around it, and inclusions and stuff like that, so I can't really do what I wanted to do with it. So, but this one, on the other hand, is a pretty good sized piece here, and this is pretty straight, so I'm gonna see what I could do with this. Maybe this is kind of like the more towards the bottom of the tree. And yeah, there's another section of it right here, so you can kind of see how big this thing is on this end here. So that's about it for that. So that would have been nice though, to go in the mill. splitting some wood. Made a good pile today. Ha! It's almost as tall as a log splitter. But yeah, that log splitter's like 16 years old now, and this thing has been an amazing tool. And I can't even tell you how many tens of cords this thing has probably split. About 80 cords, maybe, somewhere around there, and it's still going strong. So the one thing I like about this and these Huskies is that when it's idling, it uses like almost no gas. So when I'm in between lifting stuff and like moving stuff over to the splitter, I can turn it down or shut it off, but it's really good on gas. So it's the 3000 series, and about a year or 2 years after I got it, it stopped running all of a sudden one day, and I looked inside. I had to take the cap off so I could look at the carburetor, and there's a little float in there that was like a little plastic donut, and somehow there's like a tiny little pinhole in it, and it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So I spent $14 and got a new carb, and that was it. So awesome splitter. And because these pieces are so big, you know, it's like doesn't make any sense to try and lift these pieces, and lifting those up and onto this thing in a horizontal position is just not feasible in terms of like efficiency and, you know, the time that it takes to do all this stuff. But anyway, that's that. And yeah, I'll probably have some more videos. To show you guys something really quick about the truck and how shiny it is and clean and everything. Well, guess what? I washed this thing about almost a month ago, and I've been driving on dirt roads and everything, and I'll just say one thing: Dawn dish detergent. It's got a surfactant in it, and it makes it so that it repels dust and dirt and stuff like that. So look at that. I mean, it looks like I just cleaned this thing. So either that, or, you know, the other dish soaps that are out there will work nicely, you know. Keeps the dirt off for a little while. A lot better than the soap that I was buying, you know, that you get for car wash soap and stuff like that. Way better. Anyway, that's it. Stayed on. So anyway, chain hook up onto the hitch, and I've been pulling out a lot of logs and stuff, and a couple of them were about 20 feet long. But this one right here, I just wanted to make this video because this is incredible. Like, this mule pulled this thing out of the woods. To the top here. So you can see, and it dragged it right through this stuff. Well, let's see here. This is the top of the tree, so right here. Yeah, that's basically easily 100 feet. We got a surveyor's tape and I've measured all kinds of stuff and for the road up here. But anyway, yeah, it pulled it all the way through all of this crap. Moved, pulled the logs out of the way. Moved all of this stuff. This is all piled onto the side of the little road right here. And I had to cut one of the trees down. But I'll tell you what, we're still going, okay? I'll walk you through here. It's a beautiful day. That's the stump right there. I don't know if you guys can see it. Okay. It was about 15 feet taller than this tree that was behind it. So yeah, that mule, if anybody was wondering, and this is without like really working it hard. The hill is steep enough, but still, I mean, look at what it dragged it through. It went around all of the stumps, these boulders in the ground. It moved that boulder right out of the way, dug a huge trench right through there, and it just pulled it all the way through. I'm like amazed, actually. I got it up to here and it got stuck on this tree right here. So I reoriented the chains and everything and got it to come down. This is all firewood right here that came off the side of the trail. Nobody even knew it's there. I'm gonna cut that stuff up too. So yeah. This definitely was worthy of a short little video because I can't express how much work this little mule has done. It's incredible. When you have a couple 100 pounds in the back of that thing, and it already weighs a ton by itself, you got a lot of inertia going on with all that weight. So back down. Luckily it's not in the dirt. I might just cut it up right here. It's not dirty. I think that's what I'll do for now. But anyway, so yeah, just a basic, setup with the trailer hitch. It's a triple ball, so I can wrap it around the bottom part and around the side. And yeah, this thing is heavy duty. Definitely impressed with this thing. So these guys did their homework. It's definitely a mule. That's all. can see, there's not really much that I can get out of this anyway. So probably 4, 5, 6 good size, 6-inch wide pieces, and that's pretty much about it. But I'll cut this to like 20 feet length or 16-foot lengths so that I can have some long boards and everything. So I'm going to do a lot more building up here, and I need a lot more wood. So there's another massive tree right there. That thing is about 25 inches in diameter or more at the trunk. It's huge at the base. So I'm going to let that one stand there for a while. And it's just screwing around up here, messing around, cutting wood, getting rid of all the dead problem trees and everything, and then trying to utilize all of this stuff that I cut. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is just waste with a lot of the rot in the trees and everything. And these big hemlock logs definitely was difficult to work with. And thankfully I have this mule. We have this thing, and it dragged all of these logs out of here. I mean, these are huge. These are huge logs for a little mule, pretty good size. So yeah, I cut those into 16-foot sections. This one's about 14 feet long. And it took a lot of cutting until I actually got to a point where it was solid. And this stuff is definitely solid, but I have to mill it out very quickly because the bottom of the tree was pretty well rotten and hollow and had huge holes from woodpeckers and stuff like that. And I'll take another video of that when I go up there so you guys can see what I was talking about. But this stuff is solid, thankfully. But the problem is that these hemlock borers are flathead beetles, and the larvae get inside. And I'm pretty sure that's what ate the tree, so that it attracted all the woodpeckers, and then they created huge holes and stuff like that. So I don't see any sawdust coming out of the sides of these logs yet. So that's a good sign, and you can literally hear them crunching away at the wood, and it's loud. It's like a crunch that you can hear from like 15 feet away, So those pine logs that I just went through, some of them were just absolutely destroyed, and there's not much that I can do about that. This is an example right here. See these little shavings right here that look like little tiny, like particles of wood or whatever. Those are the fibers that these beetle larvae are chewing. This one right here has created its own little pile. This is recent, so they're in this log. Not sure how far into it they are, but they're in it. So this was laying up in the woods after I cut these trees down, and there were about 10 of them, and this is a smaller section of one of them, and they sat all summer long because I wasn't really up here. And that's what happens if they're in there and the tree's laying on the ground and the larvae is already in the log or in the bark, that they will absolutely go to town on it, and it doesn't take long. So yeah, it's kind of grabbed onto the tarp when I towed it. Got a whole bunch of stuff up here that we gotta clean up. It dragged a whole bunch of stuff, branches and all kinds of weird stuff, but this is it's fun for me. I enjoy doing this, and I found out a pretty efficient way to get these logs up onto the mill without a lot of trouble, and it's just, it's working out that way. I'll probably build some sort of long length of wood and have something that I'll create that's like a base that'll be a fulcrum, so that I can take the logs and wrap a chain right around the middle of it and lift it up and swing it over onto the thing. I've done that with other jobs that I've done, and it actually works really well. It's effortless. It's really cool actually too, but anyway, that's messing around. I don't have a tractor up here, so this whole thing was put together up here by me, by myself, and I just was really careful with it. I made another video a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, and yeah, it's a lot of screwing around, you know, but it's well worth it. And this stuff, I'll just show you what it looks like. And this is hemlock right here, so you know, this is right here, this is cedar. This piece on the front right here. Look at that, I can lift the whole thing with one hand. It's about 10 inches wide. So this stuff right here sat out for a couple weeks, and it's perfectly air dried and perfectly flat. So these really aren't that long. They're about 8.5 feet long. So some of them are 7, and I'll see what I can do with it, but that's that right there. There's a whole stack also inside this cabin, and just a lot of stuff up here. Definitely have to have the manual. It helps, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing up here, and I'm gonna have to build a huge rack system. I just kind of cobbled together a little rack right there to put some of the wood on, and it's pretty it's not that great. Of all the stuff that I built, that thing's like, looks like a couple 10-year-olds built it. But anyway, it's flat at least, and it's pretty heavy duty, so, but it's kind of like a temporary thing. And what I'm going to do is build a whole roof system over this. So I'll put posts there in the back, and then one in the middle, or a couple in the middle, and then one here, and then it'll have a tall overhang that covers over the whole thing, and that way I can access and get all the logs up and onto this thing from this side, because that's where I'm dragging everything down from. So yeah, I have a little system going on here, and it seems to be working pretty efficiently. You know, it takes like 2 or 3 minutes to get the logs over onto this thing, and I have a huge pry bar and a whole bunch of chunks of wood that I can use to pry the thing up, and you jab that bar pretty far underneath it, the log, and just lift up on it, and it will roll a good amount forward. So there are ways to do this by yourself if you're careful with it, and you know, you're patient and stuff like that. So anyway, back to the beginning again. So it's kind of hot up here today, and even though it's, you know, 65 degrees in the shade or whatever, it's about 80 in the sun. But we're wrapping it up here. It's, you know, the end of the summer pretty much. It's still going to be warm probably until the middle of September, but it's getting cold at night, so we're going to cycle back into the cold weather and everything, which is great because it's a lot easier for me to do stuff. I'm not like sweating like crazy, you know, with chainsaw chaps on, a long sleeve shirt and helmet, and, you know, carrying the saws and stuff like that, and moving all the logs around up in the woods. So it's a lot of work, but anyway, that's it. I'll make some more videos, more to follow. So I got this window and it was great and everything. The guys helped me get the thing into the truck, and it kind of went in at an angle like that, and because it was so heavy, it wedged itself in between the two things. So man, I got the thing out of there though, very carefully, and got it off of the actual window itself was the frame on the window is wider than this tailgate, so I had to be really careful. Got it on some planks and then dragged it over there. This is a big bay window setup here. It's definitely heavy. Just another thing to add to our camp up here, and it was free. Hey guys, oh, it's a little baby. He's drinking off of this. He's nursing on his mother. But look at where they are. Hey guys. You guys are so cute. I don't get to see stuff like this every day. I've never seen this actually, not even on a nature show. When I drove by, it looked like this little one right here was like hurt or something. And this one was trying to help it, is what it looked like when I drove by. Right, here comes the car. Okay guys, time to go. Time to go. Off the road. Oh, you're so cute. He's a little baby. He's a little baby. At least the mother's not really freaked out right now. Her quills are all down. Hi, buddy. Don't follow me. Okay, I gotta go now. I don't think your mommy's too happy you're playing in the road. Well, there's a beam, I guess. One thing I like to do is I take the bark off, like completely off. So if there's any dirt or anything in there, I don't have to worry about it. And I can just keep cutting and don't have to worry about dirt on the log. So once it's a fresh face or whatever and that blade is going that way, it just rips through it. It definitely, with these pine logs and stuff like that, the first cuts, if it's, you know, a green tree that you just cut, that bark is pretty well stuck to it. It's really hard to get off. And when you're cutting through all of that, you've got bark on one side and then bark on the other side. That blade has to cut through all, so it's pulling that pitch through and it slows down the cutting and everything. So I like to take the bark off. Anyway, I'm gonna go over this really quickly because I've made a couple videos and I've always left something out and I don't have anything written down, but I wanted to talk about this and talk about the whole setup with it and everything. So it comes in a metal crate and I was pretty surprised about that. Woodland Mills, they didn't take any chances at all with having stuff get messed up. When I first got this thing, this is like the main part of it right here. that 14 horse motor is attached to it. And then you have these large sleeves on the back that these posts have to go into. So I slid the thing over, and it was on cardboard, but it rubbed on one of the planks of wood, and it took some of the stickers off, which I don't really care about, but I got it over here and then stuck the post down through, you know, with this thing laying on its face. So I'm sitting there sticking the thing through. The nylon bushings on the inside of there's a big square sleeve on the other side of this that's about that long, and it's got bushings on either end, and they're really, you know, they're meant to hold that thing in there and stabilize it so it's straight plumb and everything. And I was trying to get the thing through and trying to push them through, and it just wouldn't go, and because the other end of it was like, you know, doing this thing, and it wasn't going through the hole. And so I had to take a block of wood and my sledgehammer and just lightly tap it through. Then I see in the manual later on, after you get the whole thing set up, then you can take the screws off and then adjust those bushings. I'm like, so anyway, there's major friction. Like, you couldn't just push them through. I've seen videos where guys are doing that, and it just did not work that way. I mean, I had to, like I said, hammer them in with a sledgehammer. So I got the post through. The manual doesn't talk about how far you're supposed to push the post through, so that, keep in mind this thing's laying on the ground, and I pushed the post further out, you know, so this upper part right here was like down right here. And then I realized, I was like, great, that changed the whole physics of like the lifting and everything. So I had to get down and deadlift the whole thing and get it up to the point where it just was at the right angle, where the body of it slid down at about this speed and seated itself at the bottom after I got these brackets on. So that was the other thing, is that these brackets, after you get the track and everything lined up and you know that it's level and all that other stuff and plumb, these aren't tightened. So these bolts right here on these wheels, the wheels, you know, have slack in them. So I got these things on the back end, so I tilted it up and I got these back wheels onto here and put my foot behind the thing and just slowly rested it down. And there's a point where it rolled off of the back here, and that was the other thing, that these little brackets right here that they tell you to put on after you put the mill on the track and everything is great and everything, but when you're putting this on by yourself, you know, not everybody has a team of people and a forklift, or because I didn't want to have the chance. It had already come off and slipped off on this end, and so I had to lift it up again, you know, and get it on, and then those wheels were off, and it was just like, you know, whatever. It took a little messing around, but I got it on there. And I will say that the instructions are very, very thorough. They didn't mess around with, you know, itemizing everything, and all the bolts have the millimeters and their, you know, the lengths, the shaft diameters, all that other stuff. Each bag has a paper label inside it, and it shows you what size screw it is, and, you know, so it's idiot proof. I laid out all the bags. I knew exactly what went where. The instruction manual was very thorough and wasn't very, you know, it wasn't confusing. That was the other thing. This thing went together very quickly because they're really good instructions. So the one thing is that I got the Powerhead 80, and the handle on the thing is a pretty significant setup on it because it's got a lot of stuff attached to it and pulleys and all this other stuff. And so I found that later on you can take the whole thing apart again. To put the Powerhead 80 on there, you got to take the whole handle off, take the bolts out that hold the pulleys, release the cables, and I got the whole thing together, and I was so happy that I got it together. And then I looked at the instructions for that thing. So I will say right off the bat that coming out of the box, you know, this right here is like heavy duty steel. This isn't attached on the end here because I don't really need it right now, but this type of steel right here is a very high grade, ultra strong steel. It is very difficult to bend. I've used this in the construction industry and it's galvanized. So again, they use quality steel and that translates into everything, the way that this thing is made. So I have a log splitter, a 22-ton log splitter, and that has a Kohler 3000 series engine on it, and this is a 14-horse Kohler also. And I can say this about Kohler engines: on the log splitter, I flip the choke over, pull the cord no more than 2 times. I've had this thing for 12 years. It takes 2 pulls and the thing starts every single time. So I'm hoping that the reliability is the same with this one. So that's that about that. So getting the whole thing together was kind of tricky, and again, this is with one person. They tell you to put this thing together, you know, you can put it together a certain way, you know, get everything fastened together and stuff, and then use these loading hooks on the top to lower the thing down on the frame. I didn't do it that way. I got the whole assembly onto the tracks and then I attached this after, which was really kind of frustrating with just one person because the thing kept swiveling. One end would go down, and there are 5 bolts or 4 large bolts that go through the back part of this armature right here, the angled part, and the vertical part of this post. There are bolts that go through all of those, and then the cable and pulleys are attached to that also. So if people were here like watching me do this by myself, you probably would have laughed your ass off. It was like whack-a-mole, and I didn't have my spanner wrench with me. I could have just stabbed it through the hole and then gone on to the other side and, you know. Anyway, enough about that. The tape that comes with it, that was in a really thin foam strip, and I left it on the trailer by accident, and it rained, and even though it was wrapped up in foam, moisture got in there, and this, I found out that this tape right here is like a decal. It's ultra, you know, if you guys remember putting model airplanes together with decals, that's how that stuff is put on. So if it gets wet, you can like smear it, you know, it'll come right off. So it should be more significantly designed than that. But anyway, don't be an idiot like me and leave the thing out. That's the only thing that I left out. I thought I had everything, but so you attach these things to it, and each one of them has, well, not each one, but certain ones have these brackets on them, and they tell you to take grease and put them inside these or whatever, and I don't take any chances. I used barn chain lubricant because that seeps into the metal, and that's why you never see rusted chains on a chainsaw if they're using barn chain oil. So I dipped it in that and screwed them in and out and in and out a million times, and so that's going to keep those from binding up and stuff. It's really easy to level, and the track and everything is really smooth once it's all set up and everything. And this thing is really heavy and rolls on its own, so you want that, you know, you want it to be able to freely roll without going from one end to the other. You know, it should slow down and stop somewhere. But this is perfectly level all the way across. This one has an hour meter on it, and it's a tiny little thing, and it's operated by vibration of the motor. So that was kind of interesting. I can just say that this thing is really well built right out of the box. That was the other thing. I'm pretty sure they were assuming that I was going to use the thing right away, so, which I did. I went onto the website and I talked to one of the representatives. She was really nice, and talked to her multiple times with questions over a couple different days, you know, months apart from each other, because I was researching all this stuff. And she saw that the number that she was looking at was different than what I was seeing on the Woodland Mills website. So I said that I was seeing the price for $38.28, I think it was. and that's for the standard HM126 with the track that comes with it. I got the 16-foot long, so I had to get another extension, but it came with that Powerhead 80 for free. And all said and done, because there was that discrepancy with the pricing and everything, she basically said, well, I'll just, I'll create some sort of change in it or whatever, so you don't have to, I'll honor the price that you're seeing or whatever. So she took $1,400 off the entire sale. They said that it was going to take 7 days before they processed everything, and then it was going to get shipped out after 7 days. Well, the thing was at my house in 5 days. The day after I purchased it, there was an email, and they were trying to arrange for the delivery and everything, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh, okay. Faster than I thought. So I know that I probably, any issues that I come up with, I've seen the customer service and everything that people have dealt with through Woodland Mills, and I'm pretty happy with that. And that's the other thing, this is a big chunk of change. It's not, a $1,500 or $800 portable sawmill, which is what I was using. I can't talk badly about that, because that's, I cut all of the wood way up on the hill and everything, and brought that portable chainsaw mill up there and milled all the stuff, and then brought it back down and used it to build the whole cabin, the deck around it, everything, But in terms of speed and in terms of like production, I had so many logs to cut, and I just couldn't get to all of them. I couldn't mill them out fast enough, and it started snowing. And so anyway, like I said, it's definitely beneficial to do research and look at all of the other brands out there. I'm not saying that the Woodland Mills is the best, but it's the best in terms of the ridiculous amount of cross-examination that I've done with all of the different brands and everything, and watched all the videos. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos online for portable sawmills of this type, of the same concept, and you can get lost. Some people make videos and they won't talk about the little things that bother them, and I just looked at all of the problems that the other brands had, and basically did an assessment of all 4 of the major brands. And a lot of people like the Northern Tools or Harbor Freight bandsaw, and I was thinking about getting that one, and instead of doing that, I got the 592 with the milling setup and everything, because a lot of the stuff was way up in the woods, and there's no access to get up there. So I made a road, but that only goes up so far, and there's a ton of logs up there still that I have to drag down that I cut in the fall of last year. So like I said, it's worth absolutely every single penny. Just the way that it's built, the way that it's designed, the way that the ease of how it goes together and assembles. This blade guide right here is like an awesome thing. You can't have a bandsaw without a guide. It's not, it's like using a standard vertical bandsaw with no guide on it. The blade's going to wander all over the place unless you're really going really slowly and aiming it, So that was the other thing that I didn't like about some of the other sawmills, is that they didn't have that guide on it, and it's absolutely essential. And I noticed that because I had that thing all the way out, and I was cutting through a log that was about this big. It really wasn't that big, and there's a knot that was like that big around, and it came up to that knot, and it just tilted up and went over the knot and left a big hump in it. And I'm like, all right, that blade just wandered all over the place and did whatever it wanted. So I slid that guide out and ran it through there again, and it cut it perfectly flat. I'll just say that about that. That's one thing that you don't want, and especially after getting to the other end of that log, to have some sort of aberration in the wood. really bad and then it dries that way. I don't want to get my mini hand planer out or electric planer and plane down that part. So yeah, that was kind of confusing. I looked at it, I'm like, okay, I don't even know what kind of blade is on there. I don't even know if it's the combination blade, if it's for hardwood or softwood. I'm assuming it's a combination blade because that would make more sense. You know, it applies to a whole bunch of different people and whatever types of wood that they're cutting. This thing right here, what it said was to run the thing a couple passes without any water so that the band, you know, gets seated properly on the wheels and just to make sure that it's tracking properly. This thing came out of the box absolutely perfect. I didn't have to adjust anything on here at all. The tracking was absolutely perfect. There was no deviation, even, you know, an eighth of an inch or anything. One thing I will say is that they shipped the thing, and like I was saying, you don't want to have it under high tension, the blade and everything, because that will create flat spots on the wheel, and then you'll have this slight vibration. So I forgot to release it because I wasn't up here for a couple days, and I noticed that, and somewhere in there I turned it a half a turn counterclockwise and loosened it a little bit because I'm not sure. There's no dial on there that lets you know how many rotations there are. It's just a T handle. So if you're doing a whole bunch of stuff and your mind is thinking about 10 million different things, and then you look down at that handle and you're like, okay, did I turn it half turn this way, or was it all the way a full 360 degrees? There should be a dial or something on there, because that's just, you know, it's like poking around in the dark. This is a quick reference, the tape and everything, you don't have to mess around. But the other thing about the Powerhead 80 is I don't know how finite the adjustment on the motor is. You know, if you go too fast with the button, it doesn't stop exactly where you want it to. I left it off, so I haven't been using it, but I will eventually. And I wanted to go back to the water thing because you kind of have to adjust it, and you don't want this all the way up against the log because then the water's squirting onto the bark and then it's not actually getting down onto the blade as much. So you want to have this far enough away that this water is just dripping onto this blade. You don't want it spraying out there. It'll get rid of the water very quickly. The fact that it came with this is an amazing thing, so I'm not going to complain about it. And this was extremely simple to set up, other than you need a very long, ultra tiny little socket for this setup right here, unless you want to do little eighth turns every single time, because there's a band and that screw is sticking out this way, and there's only so much. Eventually you tighten it and then it's hitting the actual strap instead of the actual nut itself. I know it's trivial. You'll see if you get one of these, but the throttle and everything, I got to change that because I think it's too far forward. I just kind of copied what it showed in the manual, but I think it should be a little bit more vertical than it is. These are magnetic, so the one that I'm not using is on the back side here, and the one that's on the other side is normally set up. And the way that the pulleys are set up on this thing, it's really easy to lift and lower. So I don't know if I showed you or if you could see it that easily, but yeah, I can't say it enough. This thing is awesome. Yeah, it just rips right through it. So much faster than my 592. I hate to say it, you know, but it's just, there's no comparison at all. 14 horsepower versus a 92 or 91 and a half cc chainsaw. The thing's awesome, but this is, you know, made for the task. Larger production and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of fun messing around with these logs and everything and getting them up onto here by myself. You know, I don't really care. I like doing it. Most people would look at me and think I'm crazy, you know, but this type of stuff, physically splitting wood by hand and dragging stuff out of the woods, and, you know, I had to pick up the end of that log and pull it towards me and then lift it up and onto the bunks, and then I used the pry bar to push it forward onto these things. But I have to set up a ramp or something where it's level so that I can get the log and just slide it right on there, because I don't, these things have two bolts. There's one bolt here and one bolt here going into the track, and this can go this way. It's ultra strong steel, you know, it's not really going to bend, but it'll deviate very slightly if you keep, you know, if I keep trying to push big logs and slide them on there, and they've got little bumps and knots and stuff sticking out of them. So see, this whole log right here is absolutely destroyed. Here, I'll lift this up. I'm going to show you guys what goes on with these flathead beetle larvae here, up here in this region of the United States. Yeah, look at this. Absolutely destroyed. This thing is peppered with holes. And the thing is once they get into it, they don't make straight holes. They corkscrew, they go all over the place. This is worthless, you know? And this sucks because this, like I was showing you when I was cutting it, it was a good sized log. It's not huge, but I was hoping to get a beam like this out of it. And this is ultra straight grain, really nice pine. So I'm just not happy about that. It doesn't matter, you know, I had a pile of logs and they're in the sun and they just got worked. There's a lot of those beetles around here, so I didn't realize that they were that bad, and didn't realize that they could eat the wood that quickly. So as you can see, I mean, these are just massive holes in it. They aren't as bad in certain parts of it, as you can see, but you know, this has no structural use. I can't, you know, use this thing to build with, so it's kind of a bummer. So yeah, one more thing is these locks right here, the braces for it, really well designed, and they're definitely strong, and it's a really good cam setup on there. And once you get those things up and onto up against the edge of the post and everything, this thing really, and you can see it pushing the log in very slightly as it digs into it. So really heavy duty. All of the stuff is heavy duty. So the great thing is that, you know, it's quiet. It's not very loud for a 14 horsepower motor. Not that I really care about it. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. There's no houses around me, but I'm really impressed at how smooth the thing cuts and how smoothly it operates and starts and stays running. And you know, I'm gonna make more progress obviously with this and cut a whole bunch of stuff. And this is kind of in the dirt right now, and these are all footings. They're concrete footings or paver blocks, you know, standard 4-inch, and they're just kind of sitting on that. I drove over this about 20 times with a 36,000 pound excavator. It's packed down like crazy, so it's not like the ground is soft here. But anyway, the permanent solution to this is I'm just going to take the whole thing and pour footings underneath each one of these, which sounds like a pain, but it's not. If you know, I've done so much concrete work, it's actually going to be really simple. And I probably should have done that at first, but I'm running out of time here this summer. I haven't been up here a lot as much as I have been in the past 2 years. Like, yeah, last year I was here just about every single day. Cutting. That's all I was doing. And created about 8 cords of firewood in between all of that stuff also. And so yeah, this is going to stay up here. I'm going to keep working on it for the next couple months before it starts snowing. And I've got a nice platform down at our house in another town, and that's full concrete, huge area of floor space or whatever with it. Massive piece of concrete, and this would fit perfectly on it. So the other thing is that if I wanted to take this thing apart and move it, I can do that. But the idea was to have it basically live at one place and always stay there. It's just that the road here to get to this spot is extremely steep. It's like a 45-degree angle without any exaggeration at all. So most people can't make it up here, and our four-wheeler and my truck that has heavy-duty all-terrain tires, it makes it up here. But you know, there's no, I don't even think a tractor would make it up something that steep. It probably would, but you know, like I'm saying, it's ridiculous. I did it with an excavator too. 300-foot, you know, grade all the way up to here from the main road down there. So I had to pull this up on my trailer with the four-wheeler. And the Kawasaki Mule, that thing, it weighs a ton, and with all the power that it has and everything, I mean, it pulls those logs out of the woods like nothing. But I had a hard time pulling this thing up with the trailer behind it, because it probably weighed 600 pounds, which is about the max that you can put in the back of that mule. So it was working. I had it in posi drive 4-wheel the whole way up. I could just keep talking about it, but I need to get back to work. And I know I probably forgot a lot of stuff. I do these videos like this, I don't write stuff down. There's no script or anything. And like I said, I'm just some random person doing random stuff up here. So I hope you guys liked it, and if you have any questions or are wondering about the milling setup and everything, and the differences between the chainsaw mill and this mill, you know, if you're getting into it and are wondering about it and have questions and stuff, like I did before I started doing this, it helps to ask as many questions as you possibly can. That's the thing, without being annoying. And so yeah, really impressed. This is the second day I've used it for 0.3 hours so far on the meter. So it's really good setup. And I'm gonna make another video once I get to some larger logs that are bigger in diameter, that are gonna max out the capacity for this thing. The throat width is nice and wide on it, and it would be nicer if there was more room, because if you look at the outline of the opening on this thing right here, you know, log is shaped like this, obviously, so this is made to go over, but then there's this huge support right here. It would be cool if they could maybe angle this a little bit more, you know, so that you could get more, I don't know. I'm nitpicking about stupid stuff now, but anyway, that's it, guys. So have a good day and stay safe and spend time in the woods, you know? Spend time in nature. Hanging out inside a house all day long and watching videos or on your computer or whatever, you're just not getting it, you know? You're not getting the full experience. And not everybody has land that they can go out and do whatever they want with, but you know, make time to go out and spend time in nature before it's all gone. Totally aside from, you know, the mill and everything. A lot of the trees that I cut, really quickly, I just wanted to talk about this. The trees that I did cut last year that were problem trees, that were leaning into other trees or were broken off and stuff like that, I cut those out and the trees that were underneath it have grown like almost 2 feet in height from last year. So in 1 year, from when I looked at it at the beginning of last summer, I can see that all of the trees around here have soaked in the sunlight. You know, there's nothing above them anymore. There's no canopy of a huge tree blocking out all the sunlight. So it's kind of cool to see nature reclaim itself, and it happens very quickly here. So that's that. It's looking a little gray out. I'm going to do this for a little while longer and then I'll probably take off, but that's it, guys. Have a good day.